Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair were arguably two of wrestling's biggest stars during the 80s. And for us wrestling fans, it was always assumed that Hogan represented the WWF, whilst Flair represented the NWA/WCW during their rivalry. We would all hope one day that the two icons would meet in the ring, settling the score over who was best. The time finally seemed to have come in 1991 when Flair jumped ship to the WWF, almost making it certain the two megastars would finally be able to clash in the ring together, fulfilling a long-awaited dream match. After Ric Flair went against the odds of winning the 1992 Royal Rumble and winning the WWF Championship, both the Nature Boy Ric Flair and the immortal Hulk Hogan seemed to be on a collision course with each other, colliding at Wrestlemania 8. Well, as we all know, that match never happened, with the Nature Boy defending the WWF Championship against Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan moving his attention to Sid Justice at the showcase of the Immortals. The question is, why did the then most anticipated match of both the 80s and 90s never happen on the biggest wrestling stage in the world? Surely the match would have been one of WrestleMania's biggest draws at the time, easily packing out the 60,000 plus seater at the Hoosier Dome. The truth is, the WWF was planning for the feud to culminate at Mania for the WWF Championship, as match graphics were made showing the planned main event, and also mentioning the feud on a special WrestleMania report in February 1992.
The main event will see the flamboyant one, Ric Flair, defend his newly acquired WWF title against the immortal Hulk Hogan.
But before their planned match at Mania, WWF experimented on whether the match would be a draw or not, with the two facing off on house shows 8 times between November 1991 to February 1992. Hogan would win the majority of the matches, with almost all of them being count-out victories. But did the match look to be a success and a big draw for the main event at WrestleMania? According to what J.J. Dillon wrote in his autobiography about the time and period when he was one of Vince McMahon's right-hand executives dealing with the talent roster, he says McMahon wasn't happy with how the matches came off at events. He explained the numbers and reaction weren't strong enough for McMahon to feel that the match would draw as well as once thought. McMahon ultimately felt the match was 5 years too late. The low expectations resulted in the WWF quickly changing the main event into a quote-unquote double main event. Whilst both have mentioned in shoot interviews the reasoning behind the cancelled main event, they seem to contradict each other, as Hogan would place blame on Vince, whilst Flair believed it had something to do with Hulk wanting to tape the television spin-off of the movie Thunder in Paradise. Flair would mention in an interview, "I don't know that was ever booked, and that was never promised. That's an illusion that people have. When I got there, McMahon said that's a possibility, but at the same time, I knew Hulk wanted to go out and do the show Thunder in Paradise, and they weren't getting along, and I guess they decided to go another way. To make sure, in case he left early, they put us in arenas all over the country several times." Some people said it was a cash flow problem. I've never heard an explanation, but it was never promised to me. Ric Flair clearly has no regrets, adding that, "It's nothing that I lose sleep over," as he was pleased with how his feud with Savage turned out. But according to Hogan, something that just didn't happen was WrestleMania. It was supposed to be me and Flair. That just didn't happen. We were scheduled to wrestle each other. We'd gone on a live event loop, went to Chicago, Minneapolis, and Milwaukee, and broke all the records. Flair Hogan was magic. You could have doubled the ticket price and it would have sold out. We were on the fast track to WrestleMania, me and Flair. Then, all of a sudden, the gears got switched, and I never really figured it out. Fans also believe the two never met at WrestleMania due to the ongoing steroid scandal that had hit earlier on. Allegations of steroid use within the company had fingers pointing at Hogan, so Vince could no longer make him the WWF champion and the face of the company. If Hogan couldn't be champion, the obvious choice would be to have Flair go over. But this was the 90s, and so far, a heel wouldn't leave WrestleMania as WWF champion until 2000. And of course, having a DQ finish in the main event wouldn't go over so well, as Hogan ironically proved at WrestleMania 8's main event. At the time, the WWF would pass on any future matches between the two, and Flair was the first to leave the WWF in February 1993, returning to WCW. Hulk Hogan would also leave the WWF the same year to pursue his acting career, until WCW approached him with a big money contract that he couldn't refuse. Hogan would sign for WCW in June of 1994. This time, WCW would waste no opportunity to have the dream match WWE refused to put at their biggest event. What do you guys think? Would it have been a big draw? Let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.